there's going to be another jump, another shift in frequency, because you are amongst the ones who are more sensitive and are more aware. You have the potential to experience it quite forcefully. And if you have done your job in reducing fear and replacing it with trust and curiosity, you know that this jump in frequency is something that you have been anticipating, been feeling into, and in many ways have been preparing for. So we took the opportunity with this field tuning transmission to, in a way, anchor you into the earth with earth frequencies very deeply, so you are better prepared physically and energetically to make this leap forward. With this, we are going to pause our explanation and allow you to lead the conversation as desired.
So my question is about the fractal nature of reality. I'm trying to understand and help us all understand a bit more about what you have said. For example, once you share that as Yafi continues to be this vessel, and I guess that applies not just for Yafi, but for many mediums, she will embody more and more of that Hathor energy and kind of expressed it as though we are all just fractals of all these clans that we belong to, families that we belong to. And I'm trying to understand how that tapestry is kind of woven together, even if at the highest level it is all intertwined, but on an individual soul level, how do those fractals interact?
This question can be quite complex to answer, as the true nature of reality, the whole of reality, the fractal to its purest origin, is not only beyond human comprehension, but even beyond comprehension of creation itself, as it is ever ongoing and evolving. Now, that being said, we can demonstrate the understanding of a fractal. So if you have a fractal, as you know, any piece of the bigger picture, any piece of reality is a representative of a bigger piece and a bigger piece and a bigger piece, or smaller and smaller and smaller. Now, in addition to it, there is a natural condition of specialization. What does that mean? That if there is one point on the fractal and there's an opposing, far away point on the fractal, those will have possibly opposing functions, opposing purposes within the whole that they are functioning in. Now, if you take a smaller portion of that fractal and you take the same 2 points on the smaller fractal, you will find similar functions and purposes as applicable for the smaller pattern as the larger pattern. we're trying to see if there is a practical example we can provide to make this more concrete for you. We will pause here and ask if you understand the example we have provided.
You froze for a moment. And so I didn't hear the last part of it, but perhaps you could try one more example. And I would add that I'm trying to understand how that also then relates to the parallel simultaneous no time realities.
Yes. When you truly talk about no time or the quanta or the oneness of all fractals, it goes way beyond what the human mind can comprehend. In order for it to make sense to human cognition and to human understanding, you must then take a slice, a snapshot of reality and break down the elements in order to make it comprehensible. However, in reality, every snapshot is a snapshot of a moving, evolving state of creation. So we are finding difficult to give you an example that it's practical and applicable. However, we hope that you can understand that the example that we provided or the information that we provided is about the functions of the different parts and different aspects of the fractal. An example would be the notion of light and darkness, of night and day. In darkness, you have the hidden, the shadow, what you would also consider negative. In the light, you have the seen, the experienced. That is very, very general. Now, when you take this, a smaller fractal of that light and darkness is your experience of day and night. Night, of course, being the hidden, the darkness, day being the seen, the experienced. Similarly to the larger functions of darkness and light, in the day and the night, there are different functions. In the night, for example, the physical, what you see as the physical body, naturally goes to sleep, while the inner, the hidden, is what awakens. Also, externally, when it's dark, your physical eyes cannot see. When it's dark, you cannot see outwardly. You're encouraged to see inwardly, to experience your inner world. This is an example how a general idea, such as light and dark, can have fractals that are very big and very general, and then smaller and more specific yet. And of course, they'll be smaller and smaller and smaller. However, some general functions of the different aspects will remain depending on their place or function within the fractal.
I'm sorry you froze at the last part, but I understand, I think, that aspect of where you say how everything is within everything and has a kind of polarization in it or other point, counterpoint that also contains another counterpoint. Is that kind of what you were expressing?
Not only counterpoint, but they are repeating. The nature of the fractals is repetition of patterns. So the same pattern is going to repeat on really, really large scales, but also very, very small scales. And yes, the patterns will have opposing points, but any pattern. So for example, the pattern of growth will happen on the same place on the fractal versus the pattern of sleep and introversion, the pattern of awakening, the pattern of doing or be versus being, those two dichotomous realities. every aspect, the aspect of the masculine versus the feminine. So they'll be oscillating between the two depending on where you are on the specific pattern within the fractal.